Oh, massive hello to everyone watching. I don't really know if people come up or show up here, but this is like a testing thing that I'm doing. It's actually the first time I decided to see what it looks like being on the other end of this stream. And I probably mess up so many times now talking to you guys. So I just went up to say happy Friday to everybody. And I just really wanted to see how it works because you see, this is the first time for me to actually live on camera and I can see people popping up here. Actually, when I was a little child, I always wanted to be a TV presenter, a radio presenter. So I think partially my interest for just speaking English all the time without ever stopping would have to originate at those times when I was just talking in English all the time. And basically, whatever I was doing, so when I was cleaning the windows, I spoke English. I spoke English to myself, and my parents said I would make a perfect advertiser because of the fact that I spoke English so much. Actually, I see people popping up here, which is something I didn't expect that much, to be honest. So I want to say hello to everybody and feel free to text me in the live chat. Tell me what your name is and where you're watching. I'm very happy to welcome you here to this live stream of mine. And I hope that I have a few things to share with you today because I have prepared, even though this may look completely random, I have prepared a few interesting things to share with you over the course of this live stream. I hope the video quality is good enough for you to be able to see me. If you have no idea who I am, I'm going to tell you my name is Lilia. I'm a Ukrainian girl and I'm an English teacher. And I've been teaching English for about 12 years now. I'm very excited about this. I'm very happy to be in the profession because I think that teaching English in a mindful and conscious manner is one of the most important things we can do. I think the world needs more educators like us, doesn't it? I think the world needs more educators who are actually concerned about our students' well-being. I think bridging the gap between people's psychology and their ability to speak a foreign language fluently is super important, isn't it? So if you agree with me, please type in your name into the chat. And I'll be very happy to interact with you online there. Hi, hello. So I just got my first ever comment on a live stream from Arayo. Hello there. Hi from Japan. Is this the first time you're doing a live stream? And I'm saying yes. I'm very proud to say yes to you, Rio. And I'm very thankful to you for popping up here onto the live stream. So today I have planned a few things for us to do. So I decided just to share a few books with you, the books that I read. And they will be the books in English because I advocate reading in English quite a bit. And I also always tell my learners they should read as much as they can and as much as they want because I think reading informs writing quite a bit. I think if we do read in English, that will just feed into our writing skills. I think that's very important. Many of my students are currently in the process of preparing for their English exams, such as IELTS, CAE, CP, FCE, TOEFL, and things like that. And writing seems to be a part that confuses so many of my learners because, well, partially because of the criteria that examiners pose for writers, for potential candidates. And I think it's kind of a job to be able to figure out what they have to do in that writing paper. So I know that no universal rule serves everybody, but I do think there are a few things that people can do to improve on their English. So I think reading books is one of the greater things that you can do to help yourself grow into a confident writer. And I always make sure that I have a few books to read on my shelf because if I don't have any books to read, I'm kind of starting to feel a little bit unhappy. So I'm just going to share some of those books with you. Another great thing that I have about the books that I have on my desk right now would have to be the following. I really like the books that are kind of self-help and also practical. And what I mean by self-help is self-development. We grow in a world which is far from perfect. And I really, really think that if we're able to inspire ourselves, to turn ourselves into, better people, more understanding, more compassionate, more loving, more considerate, more accommodating for other people's emotions, we'll be able to turn this world into a more loving place to be in. So that's what I generally tend to do when I'm picking a book on Amazon or in a bookshop. I try to go for a book that is killing two birds with one stone. First and foremost, that would have to be the book in English to help you with your English skills. And secondly, that would have to be the book that would actually help you turn yourself into a more developed human being. So this is the pile of the books that I have here, and I'm going to review some of those books for you there. I would also like to say hello to Thomas, Spencer and Hassan from Morocco for posting things up in the chat. If you want to post things up in the chat, you're always free to do so. And probably you have a few reading suggestions for other people who may rewatch this live stream afterwards, for them to actually tap into some interesting reading materials in their own good time. So here's the first thing, and I cannot recommend it enough. It's called The Four Agreements, and it's also titled A Toltec Wisdom Book. So this is actually a book that has helped me a lot work out my own personal psychology. What I really love about this book is how well written it is. Sometimes learners are concerned about the level of English in the book. Sometimes people may say, oh my God, how do I read a book that is intended for native speakers to read? And I'm just, my intermediate level of English will not be suitable enough for me to be able to tap into a book. But this is actually one of those books that I would recommend to everyone, to anyone whose level of English is even pre-intermediate and higher up. I think this book is such a fantastic resource to put your psyche in place and to also kind of get inspired to read a little bit in English, even if your level of English is not high enough. Pre-intermediate and above, that would have to be just the right level for this book. So you can definitely try to explore more about it if you're into human psychology. And also this book provides such a great wisdom for life. I wish I was educated more on this when I was a child, because some of my, caregivers, like the people who were around me when I was a kid, those were people who lacked emotional understanding and who very often found it difficult to interact with children in a way that would be engaging for the children to unlock their creative potential. So this would have to be one of the books I would recommend to all parents, and generally it helps you put your life in place. And along the lines of this book, there is another book that I'd love to share with you, which is called The Mastery of Love. And this is the book by the same author. You can also find it on Amazon. And this is like a dwelling on some further notions from this book. So this would have to be a lovely suggested read if you have read The Four Agreements. I really love it. It's probably of the same English level. So if your English level is intermediate plus, this would have to be a great read for you. It's also quite inspiring. By the way, if you have read any of those books, make sure you let me know that by writing a comment in the chat. And also, if you have any other reading suggestions for people who are learning English, also please feel free to put them into the chat. Rio is asking how many pages the first book has got. So just for you, Rio, that would have to be 138 pages. So it's not a very long read, hand on heart. It's quite a short read. I think I read this book in about 5 days or so. I found it very difficult to stop reading it. It was so engaging, so gripping, so I really loved it. Also, these books, one great thing for people who have just joined that I would really love to reiterate is the fact that I think those books are great because they recommend practical suggestions, and many of those suggestions or exercises or techniques you have to do by just writing things down in your reflection journal or in your observation journal. So you will have a real chance to practice your English writing alongside doing some reading first. It's also really great. Another fantastic book that I'd really like to recommend to you is The Anatomy of Loneliness by Teal Swan. If you haven't seen my latest video on writing, that's the video where you may go in. That is the video on writing specifically. And this is one of the books that I recommend a lot to people who are into improving their English writing, but also the people who are also into kind of improving themselves, you know, working on their psyche and things like that. So that's one great read that you can also tap into. This book is so full of practical exercises. And by the way, I'm not getting sponsored for recommending any of those books. It's just that I really love them and I find them to be very enjoyable. And they've also helped me work out many of the personal problems and struggles that I had to go through, that I think I'm still going through. So that would have to be another one. It's really great, very practical. If you're struggling with loneliness, if you find yourself in a room full of people, then you don't feel like you can find connection, this would have to be the suggested read for you. Another great book by Teal Swan is called The Completion Process. And this is actually a psychological process that you can take yourself through if you're struggling with deep-seated trauma. If you went through trauma as a child, this would have to be a great book for you to solve that trauma once and for all. Because like Teal says, trauma is a situation that you go through in childhood that does not get resolved. And normally nobody around you would have an idea how to tackle that particular trauma, because we are quite emotionally uneducated in society these days. So I think this book would serve as a lovely combination of English learning plus psychology skills that I think some of you may enjoy. So those would have to be the 4 books that I have prepared for my first ever live stream to share with you. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you can use that as lovely reading suggestions if you're planning on improving on your writing skills. Thomas is asking about the level of Teal's books. I would probably say you can start reading those if your level of English is upper intermediate-ish plus. So if they're a level higher than the Agreements book. So if your level of English is kind of upper intermediate, or if you're a teacher and your student's level is also upper intermediate plus, that would have to be a lovely read. I don't think that those books are kind of written in a super flowery language, though. They're quite succinct. The level of English is also, I mean, the language is quite precise, though. So you can tap into those books without actually having to, you know, to be able to speak English at David Crystal's type of language, you see. That's the reason why I really recommend them to learners. Yeah, Rio's saying it's not very long then. So oh, and Rio is saying, now I've been reading The Wishing Chair. I recommend it. It's not too long and difficult to read. Thank you very much for that recommendation, Rio. Maybe you would like to tell us more about that particular book in the chat. That would be amazing. That makes me thinking about a game that I played in a kindergarten that had to do with the chair. Do you remember that game when the music is playing and there are like 10 kids but 9 chairs, and then one child is the odd one out? So when the music ends, everyone suddenly would have to run up to the chairs and place their bums on the chairs. So that would probably have to be the association. The Wishing Chair. I haven't heard about it yet, but I really love learning about new reads. So if you would be happy to share your ideas with us on that book and tell us more, feel free to do so. I think I'm going to be going in a couple of minutes. So I'd really love to thank you for joining me for my first ever live stream. This is actually feeling amazing. One thing that I always ask my students is, how do you feel? So guys, how do you feel right now? It doesn't have to do with the live stream. While you're typing things up in the chat, by the way, I'm not pretending to be overbearing. If you feel like sharing how you feel, that would be an amazing moment to do so. I'm feeling quite well because I thought that nobody would ever come, but a few people have showed up, and that makes me very excited and very happy. I'll also be posting another video today that's going to be in Russian, and in that video I'm going to talk about my experience of learning English and some of the general things that I did in order to reach this level of English, which I think is by no means perfect, and there is so much for me to learn, both pronunciation and vocabulary wise and things like that. So I really want to thank you. If you feel like subscribing to my channel, if you're not subscribed yet, make sure you do subscribe and also like this video. And if this is something that you have enjoyed, make sure you tell about this channel to a friend, and I'll be very happy to talk to you again soon. And that was Lilia. Ta-ta for now.